welcome to Diaspora Network Television. My name is Jermaine Nkrumah. This is Diaspora Weekly, and we're doing the spotlight on the African millennial diaspora. Okay, I have with me Annabelle Aqua. Ghanaian parents lives in Sydney, Australia. Welcome, Annabelle.
Thank you again for having me.
All right, and we have also Eloho Mukoro from Houston, Texas, with Nigerian parents. Welcome, Eloho.
Thank you, thank you. Glad to be here.
Very good. Yes. Here at Diaspora Network Television, we believe that as Africa seeks to reinvent itself, it's going to rely heavily on its diaspora. And you are the generation that's following right in the footsteps of your parents. So you have a role to play. You both live in different countries, but it's important that we start by asking you, what does Africa mean to you? Aloho, before let's hear you. What does Africa mean to you?
Okay, well, Africa is, if I would sum it up, I would say is my identity. I was born in Houston, Texas, so therefore I was not raised in Nigeria, as some of my cousins and friends were, but I was blessed to be raised in a very tight-knit Nigerian community where I was taught my culture, my heritage, the food, the dance, everything, and especially being Nigerian in America, I feel like Africa definitely is my identity. Where when I was younger, something that I would hide, I became to embrace as I got older. So I think Africa is just the embodiment of who I am and where I'm from. And yeah.
Good. What about you, Annabelle? Africa. When you hear it, what does it mean to you?
Africa to me, I have to agree, it brings a sense of it is a big part of who I am now. Definitely in my childhood, I have a lot of memories of eating the food and dancing and everything. Dancing is a big part of me connecting with Africa culture. In adulthood, it again means quite a bit to me. I did fall off a little bit in my adolescence because I don't know, when you're a teenager, everything's embarrassing and everything's the end of the world. But I've definitely come to really love and understand Africa and what it is to me.
What is life for an African child in Sydney, Australia like?
I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, it was very interesting. I definitely knew that being Ghanaian in a country that is predominantly white or Asian, I knew I was very different early on, and I knew the way I was raised was very different early on. And I think that really helped to solidify a really good bond with not just me and my parents, but a bond between me and my culture as well.
And you, Eloho, Eloho, yours is different because you virtually grew up in Nigeria because the Nigerian community in Houston is actually the largest in America.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the jollof rice, the big hat parties, what was it like?
So what's fun is that although the Nigerian community is very, very large in Houston, there's also a very large Black community as well. So when I was younger, I was very much embedded in the African culture, which, like you said, I was like I was basically born in Nigeria. But when you go to school, when you start going to school or you start playing sports and you start interacting with people, as I grew up, I realized that I was in a very sheltered place as well. And I didn't know a lot of stuff that was going on outside my immediate African community. So although it is a positive because I got to absorb like a sponge all my heritage, all my culture, but just being in Houston at the same time, when you grow up, you realize that, you were in a little bubble and, now you have to learn as an adult how to really integrate with your community where you live. I have people that I've known since little that I've just seen here and there, but because I was in this little bubble, anything else around me. So Houston is a very good way to learn your culture, but it's also, you can get stuck in your little niche, in your little group there. So you got to spread out.
I know parents are notorious for embarrassing their children. Any experiences that you guys get to share? Oh, well, I see. I can tell Annabelle is laughing. I think you have some experiences. You know, how they
Oh,
come to school and the culture is different. And what was it like?
definitely. Um, well, it's my dad's fine. Like he's very um quite quiet until he needs to be. It's my mom. My mom is very Ghanaian, very loud, very proud. It's hard to be in a space and not know that she's also there with you. Growing up with her, I think gave me a strong sense of self because I obviously wasn't born in Ghana. I haven't been back, but I didn't feel like I missed out on too much because she was a really good connection for me to the homeland.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we African parents, we spank our kids, but I also know that fathers are very soft on their daughters. So
I agree.
what was the best spanking, the worst spanking you did? Eloho, did you ever receive any?
The one, I think, talking about my parents,
Eloho.
my mom, very quiet, but my dad is very strict. So I think the worst spanking I had was we spent the day together. I was young, I was like 7. And we spent the day together, and Valentine's Day was coming up at school. And Valentine's Day is a very big thing for the kids trying to get stuff. So I found my way getting really comfortable with my dad. We were having a really good time. So by the end of the day, I told him that I had a crush on a boy at school and that I wanted to buy him something for Valentine's Day. That was the worst beat. That was the worst spanking ever.
Big mistake. Big mistake.
He does, he
You
told me he
wanted
does
to
not
buy
send me
a
to school.
boy.
He doesn't send me to school for, that was the motto of that day. I don't send you to school for boys. I send you to school to learn. And if I hear that you're going to school for boys, then spanking comes, follows.
What about you? Annabelle? What did you do? Come on, fess up.
Um, I'm not trying to expose myself, but I think that I was pretty decent as a child. I don't really have that many memories of being like spanked, but if I was, it was definitely by my mom. I don't really recall my dad.
Time out. Spanking is not something you forget. Spanking.
Yeah, I
You
don't
know
really.
what? We're gonna keep this tape. We'll make sure your parents will not hear about this tape or see it. So you can go ahead and fess up. What did you do
Um,
to get?
I don't really like recall like any like me doing anything that was like that bad that required
Okay,
a really bad spanking. I think there's two
spanking.
occasions
So you're a
I
good.
recall.
Uh
Yeah,
huh.
I was really good.
Uh huh.
My oldest
Good.
siblings were born in Nigeria. I think they have a lot more experiences with um, beatings, as they would call
Okay.
it. But I don't really have any, and neither does my younger brother being born here. Yeah.
All right. So, school days. You obviously you both of you are born where you live right now, right? Any trips to Africa that you remember?
No, I haven't been.
You haven't been. Hello, have you?
I haven't been either.
So you guys, do you guys know what you're missing? You have not set foot on the continent of Africa.
No.
When
Mhm.
when the borders open up and the start flying, that should be your very next thing to do. You have to set foot on the continent. It'll change your life forever. I guarantee it. Okay. So now let's talk
Sure.
about school. Let's talk about schooling. We know you go through the private schools and you have boy crushes and your fights. Let me take you to high school and to the university. What are your professions right now that you're pursuing? Start with you, Eloho.
So, as in, what was I pursuing then, or what am I doing now?
Your profession, or chosen profession. What did you study in college?
Okay. So, I actually studied public health in college,
Okay.
and I
Mhm.
am currently a middle school teacher.
A
And
middle
I
school
plan to,
teacher.
and I plan to
Okay.
use my public degree in something geared towards children, because I've been working with children since the age of what, about 10. So something along the lines of working with children, with underprivileged children, children with different kinds of maybe diseases and different things, just learning disabilities. Any way that I can educate is the goal. So
Okay. All right. And Annabelle, profession?
So, I have a degree in criminology, but I decided not to pursue it in the workforce. It just wasn't really for me. So, I'm currently working as a freelance makeup artist.
oh, nice.
Freelance makeup artist. Okay. Okay. So why did you choose it if it wasn't for you, the criminology?
You really have to have the stomach for it. And at the end of the
Okay.
day, there's a lot
Okay.
that you're exposed to, and you just really have to desensitize yourself early on to what you have to experience and work through. And it was just too much for me.
Okay. Tell us about Sydney. What is Sydney like for in terms of the city, the people, how blacks in Sydney relate with the community at large? Paint us a
So
picture.
life in Sydney, it's interesting because I haven't actually traveled anywhere outside of Australia, so I don't really have too much to like relate it or compare it to. But it's quite multicultural for the most part. There isn't really an area where it's specifically like just like white Australians are. Maybe around like the Sydney CBD area, but the western area where I'm from is very, very diverse. So you have people from all walks of life. So it looks different depending on what area you're visiting.
Okay. What about you, Aloha? Show us Houston. What's the big deal about Houston? You hear Houston, hear Houston. What's the big deal?
Houston is just like a lot of places. I would say Houston is a very big melting pot. So Houston, you can find so many different backgrounds all in the same place. We almost have different areas of Houston that are kind of roped off for different nationalities. There's places you can go to Chinatown where the street signs, everything is in Chinese. You can go to places where it's predominantly Hispanic. You can go places where it's predominantly African. We all have our little, it's like our all little niches, and then we integrate when we go to schools, when we go to work, when we go to, so I think there's a lot of diversity happening in Houston. I feel like that's why a lot of people come to Houston for job opportunities, land opportunities. Things are also cheap here, well, relatively. So it's a good land of opportunity for sure, for any
Your,
background, any race.
your circle of friends, are they strictly Nigerian?
So my circle of friends are actually Black American, majority Black American. Um,
Okay.
I have friends that are African, but they're like my family. So, for example,
Okay.
Janice, my family, but she's
Okay.
also one of my best friends. So, like that.
Okay. Okay. So when it comes to other African youngsters, African millennials in Houston, between just Nigerian and Ghanaian, do you know of any other group like Somalis, Senegalese? You don't know?
So yes, I do know there's Nigerians, there are Ghanaians, there are Kenyan, there are people from, I know some people from Congo, um,
Hmm.
Congo, Tanzania as well, around there
Hmm.
because I know that because I was a part of a young adult ministry and they speak fluent French and stuff like that. So that's my first like, whoa, like you guys really speak French. So I think I've come in concert with those major countries here in Houston.
Do you
But
find
I've met
that
some.
you relate? Do you find that you relate more? I mean, that would be natural if that's the case. But when you find Africans of different countries, is there a block, or do you flow with them that much the same way as you flow with Nigerians?
So I would say that is a little bit of both. So naturally, we do not flow the same way with I do with Nigerians because it just comes to your upbringing, even to the accents. Sierra Leone is another really popular one that's here a lot. Sierra Leone,
Okay.
the accents, the language, even up to how the generalization, the parents, and how they can be a little different. So it doesn't necessarily flow like how it flows with the Nigerian. When you see a Nigerian, it's just like you just slip
Automatic.
into your exactly, just automatic. But there is a
Okay.
bond when it comes to you can instantly identify another African in the room. Or when I was in school, there's another African in class. That's all that mattered then. We weren't asking where in Africa. We weren't doing that. You're African, I'm
Okay.
African too, and we're a team
Okay.
after that.
Okay. What about you, Annabelle? Your circle of friends in Sydney?
Well, since Sydney is so diverse, I wouldn't really say that I have a specific, like, friends from a specific background. My friends are quite mixed. However, my closest friend is also a Ghanaian.
All right. What about your boy crush? Where is he from?
I currently don't really, I'm not really dating.
You're not dating, but you have a crush.
Definitely not.
So
Not
wait,
even.
you haven't seen anyone that
So,
said, that one.
I don't want to expose anyone, but the men in Sid is slim pickings right now. So,
Okay. So now the population of Sydney, you say is diverse, but what's the African representation there like?
in my opinion, I think it's still quite small. I know I'm familiar more so with the Ghanaian community, but I know that the Nigerian community as well, we only make up a small part of the population. So, um, similar to what you were saying earlier, when you see another African, it doesn't really matter what, like, where exactly they're from. You're African, I'm also African. So I think that a connection can very easily be made. But the Ghanaian community here isn't who it is.
Yeah. You see, the African continent is made up of about 54 countries, different ones, and but when you really meet people, the reason why I'm asking you this, when you meet someone from Africa, besides the conscious knowledge that, oh, this person is from Kenya or Tanzania, don't you just find that there's something very, very similar about you, and that in your case, let's say Aloha, when you see an African of your age group and you see African
Mhm.
American, or you see other people of other descent, whites and stuff, do you see a difference culturally?
With other races and me.
Yeah, yeah, the African and then everybody else, a difference in
Yes,
culture. All
yes,
right.
for sure.
But how
Culture.
do you get beyond that culture to say, okay, this person is also African people, somebody of African descent. So regardless of where they're from, do you relate on that level or is it different?
I think that there's always, to me, there's always a way to relate. Even if you haven't gone through the exact same things, there's always. So I just feel like, um, for example, like my boyfriend is Black American, and
Okay.
so there are some differences culturally with how he grew up, with how I grew up, or what kind of rules he had versus what kind of rules I had. And that shapes your priorities, what's on the top of my priority list versus what's on the top of his priority list. But I feel like, as long as you are willing, there is some kind of connect that people can connect on. So here is the same thing. I mean, like I said, I have lots of friends. You know how social media is. So I have a lot of friends, but my immediate friends are from grade school and they're Black American. But even with them, we have a connect. You start to realize that it's not just about, oh, you will never understand you had a strict father. There are other ways that people have been sheltered or whatever in their life as well. So there's always something that you can relate to. So I feel like it's easy to relate, but it's also easier to relate, of course, when it's like kind of Black people. Black people have a way of, whether you're Black American or you're African, we have a way of connecting better than any other, at least in my experience. I have white friends as well, but we don't relate as well.
Yeah. All right. So, Annabelle, when the time comes for you to get married, um, where he's from, does it matter, or it doesn't?
Not necessarily. I really don't think it's that big of a deal where they're from. I think it's more so what their morals are, because I think that will define, like, if we decide to have children, like, how will we raise them? I think that culturally it shouldn't matter. It's more so what you want to impart to the children that you raise, or how you decide to live your lives together.
So, white, Japanese, Chinese, doesn't matter. Very good. You have
I do feel like it's
Aborigines. There are some Aborigines in Australia, right? What's that community like?
The Indigenous Australian community, from my knowledge, is quite small, and far and few between. I think that they're still very much recovering from a lot of the trauma that was instilled upon them, because Australia does have a very dark past with how they did treat their First Nations owners. But yeah, the community is quite small, but when you do meet them, they do all seem to have a good sense of community amongst themselves.
Would you buy anything without first knowing exactly what the product was and how it could benefit you? Definitely not. Neither should you vote for your next member of parliament without knowing who they are and how they plan to solve your problems. Watch The Next MP only on Diaspora Network Television and find out the men and women who want to represent you in parliament. The Next MP only on DNT.
We wake up every morning to different stories from politics, business, sports, and entertainment. These stories, one way or the other, affect our lifestyle and dealings with family, friends, and business associates. Your take on Diaspora Network Television gives you an opportunity to have your take on these pertinent issues via phone in and messages to our social media platforms, DNT Ghana on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If it's an important trending story, we will definitely talk about it. Your take with me, Yalsichi, coming soon on DNT.
Both of you, have you ever considered relocating to Africa, or is it in the cards in the future for you?
I definitely want to get to a space in life where I can visit as frequently as I would like. I'm not sure if I would relocate permanently, but I definitely want to get to the point where I'm visiting a few times a year.
Okay, you have to visit first. You have to visit first, right? Yeah. What about you, Aloha? I mean, you hear a lot of Nigeria. There are some stories, and first of all, let me tell you, not all that is true. But what's the curiosity? Is there a curiosity to come home to the continent?
Of course. I always say I think it's just by timing and everything that I just have not been able to. Anytime somebody's going to Nigeria, maybe I'm in a wedding or something already, it's always something that pops up and then I'm never able to truly go. The price of the tickets is also something that holds me back every now and then from just up and going by myself. But I think I'm just going to piggyback off of her answer, but for sure, I just want to get to a point where I'm able to visit a lot more, have a lot of family there. So I would be injured. I would have people to take care of me and everything. So I look forward to that day. I'm just waiting for the right time now. You know, I've waited this long. So when the God's time is the right time, then that's when I'll go. But I'm not scared of those stories, by the way. Those stories don't scare me. I've heard them all my life, but that's not enough.
Okay. Can Africa count on you?
In what
in
way?
development?
Hmm.
I think Africa can be in the way of, I think I represent, I think I'm a good represent, at least that's my opinion. I think I'm a good representation of what Africa is and what kind of people come from Africa. Well, and specifically, of course, me, what kind of people come from Nigeria and how we are. And everything that I do it for, we do it for a lot of things, of course, first for God, for your family, and definitely for a heritage, just to make sure that, when when you're excelling and people are like, where's she from? That Nigeria, I think that's a way that you can put your country on the map. That's what we say, put your country on the map. So for sure, I think I try to represent Africa in everything I do.
Okay. What about you, Annabelle? Can Africa count on you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with your answer as well. I feel as though with everything that I do, I'm not sure if it's how we were raised, like with that extra bit of excellence and really wanting to excel and be the best at what you're doing. I think that that's a very um, African trait to have, is just to excel. And in that way, having that kind of stock in you, I think that that would definitely push me, and I know that all of my African friends, Ghana and Africa as a whole, could definitely count on us, because we definitely want people to have a good perception of the continent and want to really understand Africa as a whole. So
Okay. Now let's talk about COVID-19. How is COVID playing in your respective countries? Let's start with you, Annabelle.
I feel like Australia's been doing quite well with COVID. We haven't had as many cases as other parts of the world. Um, now that restrictions have been lowered again, I think that we will definitely experience a second wave, just because of how people are. People are not the best at listening. People are not social distancing at all. I know in my profession of being a makeup artist, the service industry was definitely hit very significantly with COVID and all the restrictions. So even being in a retail space, a lot of the measures that have been taken have been decreased. So I think that we'll definitely get a second wave.
Okay. Aloha, you're in the public health. You study public
Yes.
health. All right. When you
Yes.
see how the COVID is running wild in America, what comes to mind? What should be done to contain it? I mean,
So,
the
so
reason why I'm
I'm
asking this is I know you guys are. I want to position you guys into problem solving mode. When you see something going on around you, what is your role? What should be done with COVID if you had what it takes?
well, let's see. As far as in Houston, I think that it's the same things, which is people are not really adhering to a lot of things. From a public standpoint, I'm kind of concerned more about just our immune systems, even us being closed indoors and using sanitizer all of the time. When we do finally get out, our immune system is so low that, you're more susceptible to a lot of things other than just COVID. But I think I think just by being a good representation, once again, making sure that I adhere to rules and anybody that I'm with is adhering to all the rules, because if I go out with
Mhm.
somebody, I'm for them catching COVID as well as me. I feel like if everybody had that philosophy going in, even when they go out and whatever, I think that numbers would definitely be lowered. But I don't know if you guys are watching the news, but in Texas and in America, it's spiking still more than anything, and so there's definitely going to be another second wave. And I'm more concerned about my students, because the school year ended abruptly and we had to finish the last half of the school year online. And I teach an underprivileged school, so there's families that don't even have internet, cable, phone, a laptop. So there was maybe about 47% participation when we switched to virtual. COVID has really, really been impacting education, and especially for those that don't already have, are a little less fortunate or on the socioeconomic scale.
Okay, we're going to spend the next remaining minutes talking about Africa. Okay, part of the reason that DNT is focusing on you, the diaspora millennials, is that although in the case of both of you, you haven't set foot on the continent before, but when you look at all that's going on with the Black Lives Matter and everything, first of all, do you believe that your life is tied directly to the continent? Even if you're prospering in Houston, even if you're doing well in Australia, Africa is your base and you will always be seen as African. What do you think a revitalized Africa will mean to you personally in your life? Let me start with you, Annabelle.
I think that a revitalized Africa definitely means more respect, more opportunity, more understanding, that it could deliver to us all. Because as you were saying, you can be prospering wherever you are in the world, but people will still see the color of your skin and they will judge you accordingly. And I feel that if Africa itself, if we're able to shift that perception, a perception not built by us, but a perception that is still there, I think that that could benefit all of us as a whole.
Do you believe there is something that you can do to help Africa?
Definitely.
I'm staying
Making
with you.
sure to educate myself, educate those around me. I think that knowledge is definitely power, and when you know better, you do better, and that kind of encouragement can encourage those around you as well to step up and do their part where they can.
The curriculum in Australia, throughout your college, from grade school to university, all the things that you learned, was there ever any mention about Africa and from a history standpoint?
I don't really recall. I don't think that there was much on any culture that wasn't white Australia, and then a small portion of it was Indigenous Australia. Unless it was this thing that we call Harmony Day, where you could bring in a dish from your nation and you'd be able to talk about it to like your class, but that was in primary school. And when you go into high school, independent study like on a different nation, but it's not
okay. So besides what your parents have told you about Ghana, you don't have any way of knowing about the continent, right? I mean, you haven't heard anything else from anywhere. Okay. Now, okay. So when you go on the internet and you're researching stuff, does Africa even cross your mind?
Here and there, like definitely like the landscapes, like the fashion, the music. I think that more of the lifestyle definitely plays a role, not so much the politics of it all.
Okay. And so when you growing up, you went to African parties, though, right?
Yes.
And what was it like? How was it different from when you and your friends were having house parties and your friends from other parts, Australia, basically mainstream parties versus African parties? What was different between the two?
The experience you can't even compare. I feel like with African parties, they're just so much more lively. The vibes are always there. The food, meeting different people that you haven't necessarily met before. I know that my experience was definitely, I don't want to say hindered, but there was a bit of a barrier because I don't speak the language. So there was always nerves in there about, oh, what's going to happen when they find out I don't speak it? Are they going to bully me? Because I did have experiences like when I was like doing dance as a child where people would find out I didn't speak the language and then I'd suddenly be a target like, oh, haha, Annabelle doesn't know how to speak it. And then they'd start saying things and I wouldn't be able to understand it. I'd be like, Are they talking about me? Is it good? Is it
Okay.
bad? What's happening? But yeah, definitely the party scene in African party can't even compare.
So when you have your age group, your age mates who spoke the African language, did you feel like you were missing something?
Definitely. I thought that it felt like I was always 3 steps behind what was happening. And I felt like I had to work extra hard just to stay afloat in what was happening around me.
Okay. Eloho, your experience in Houston is different because Africans and Black people are everywhere. But Fred, let me start. Do you speak any of the native language in Nigeria?
Yes, so I'm not fluent in any
Which
of them, but
one?
I speak Ishan.
You speak Ishan, okay. And your father is what's your father's
I,
tribe?
my, my dad is Isoko. My dad's father is
Uh-huh.
Isoko, but my dad's mother was Ishan. Mhm.
Okay. So you spoke Ishan, but not your father's language.
Right, which
Your
was
father is
actually
not going
like
to
a
be
thing.
happy about
No, so my mom
that.
was not the one that taught me Ishan because when we were little, my dad told her that they were supposed to learn his language. So don't be teaching them Ishan in the
Okay.
house. So I just picked up from Ishan. My mom has a twin. My mom has a twin sister, my aunt. So my aunt actually speaks fluent Ishan to her children. So when we go visit her, that's when I learned how to, get some words from her, and also my grandma. So that's how I learned mine.
Okay. So let me ask you the same thing. Africa, when has there ever been a curiosity to learn about the country?
So yeah, for sure. I think maybe living in Houston, I have more of a drive to look that stuff. I remember you asking if in schools, if we were never taught about any of our history in schools, besides, of course, when slavery comes up, then that's when we would probably hear the most about Africa. But as far as like the actual different nations and what they all are about, never. Later on, and probably about high school to college, is when I started looking up for myself all the wars that happened. I just felt like it's a slow progression, and it would be nice for them to teach our culture too, our history too. But I know how there's so many in Houston, in America, that it would be hard to squeeze that into the curriculum for the year. So they kind of focus on what you need to, because it's always cool even hearing like you are studying Australian history when you're there, and so like I'm learning American history. And so I had to do a lot of, stuff on my own, a lot of research on my own, looking up the wars that happened, why the wars were happening, from some were religion, looking into the politics, all those stories that I've been hearing when I was younger, when uncles come from Nigeria and they talk, they have big, really heated political debates. Those were the things that when I got older, I just kind of, okay, what was that name of that president that one time? I look it up, kind of figure it out, It might be a little dull research. I wish I had good research, besides the Wikipedia research, but I have done my share in trying to just learn more about like my background, because it's very great when you're in American history and you're learning and you're doing so well in the class and you just understand so much about where this country has been. But as an African, you instantly in that same moment feel like, man, I am so almost empty when it comes to like my actual, where I'm actually from. So
Yeah.
I did do a lot of research, and I still do research. The research is
You
not
think
over. I'm still teaching how to
you're
speak Ishan, a lot of things.
Aloha, do you have you heard of DACA? Deferred
DACA,
action, something, something. DACA. It's been in the news
yes,
lately, right? Okay,
yes,
these are children who were brought into America from different countries. Some of them they came when they were 2 or 3, and they've been in America all their lives. Now there's a debate that they should send them back to their respective countries. If the two of you weren't born there and you came to, say, Sydney, Houston when you were about 2, but because you weren't born there and you weren't citizen, they said, well, the time is coming, you have to go back to your country. What would you do?
Hmm. So this you go first.
How old am I when this is all happening?
If you were born in Sydney and you were brought there when you were like 2, and you've grown
Okay,
up to this age, and they
right.
tell you, well, sorry, you weren't born here, you're not a citizen, so you have to go back, what would you do?
Um, I feel as though I would be happy to go back. I mean, it would definitely be a big learning curve because there's a difference between experiencing a culture from yourself and hearing about it. So I would definitely be happy to go back. I think that
But what would you
I
be
would
coming back to? What would you be coming back to? You don't know what house, what city you live in.
yes, it'd be
What
a
would you be
very, very
coming back
different
to?
life. I think the village, like, is where my parents are from. So I think that it'd be a really big adjustment because I'm 23 now. So having lived my entire life one way and then going back to another way that isn't so familiar to me, especially to somewhere that I haven't even visited, I've only ever heard about. I think that it would definitely be a big adjustment, but I'm proud to be a Ghanaian. So if I have to go, I will go.
Right. If Aloha, when you hear about the horror stories, so Nigerians are this, Nigerians are scammers, this, how does that make you feel?
um, I don't like, naturally I don't like the negative connotations when people say like Nigerians are scammers or they're known to do this, they're known to do that. But at the same time, I know what they're talking about. I know the truths. I know the truth, some truths about things. I just like every race, every has some kind of negative stereotypes or whatever. So it doesn't really. When I was young, say it affected me more, but I'm just like, whatever. We all have we all have our burdens. We all have our flaws. We all have our strengths. So it doesn't really make me feel any type of way. And I would definitely go back to my country too if they just had to shoo me out. Um, I always say I wish I was bold enough to just say, I'm just going to move back to Nigeria and just like, bring whatever ideas I have to them. And I really think that it might not be this generation. And I feel like maybe it's because I'm not bold enough, like I said, but there's going to come a time where people are going to be learning so much more about their identity. They're going to feel more compelled to go back to their homes and figure it out, even however it is, they're going to go back with whatever we learn because we know that even me and my parents are so different in just ideas and thinking. And so I just know that there's going to be a time where there's going to be a big migration back to the homeland with people that are not okay with this fighting for equality, fighting when they know they have a home that they need to build, that they could build, and it could be so even greater than any superpower that's right now. So I don't know. I have a lot of faith in
Yeah.
my country, even though stereotypes. I have a lot of faith in my country.
Annabelle, when you saw George Floyd video, what did you think?
So I only made it through parts of the video. I couldn't watch the whole thing. It was extremely triggering and uncomfortable and something that I just is very overwhelming and confronting just to see it because you hear about it all the time. I myself experience microaggressions all the time, but watching something like that and knowing that it was racially charged, it really
Mhm.
hits differently. It was just very
You say
uncomfortable.
you yourself have experienced. What's the relation between the black community in Australia and the police?
Um, it's definitely not as strained as other places in the world, but I still wouldn't say it's the best. I think that the
Okay.
Indigenous Australian community have a very bad relationship with the police, and I think that again goes back to Australia's history of and being kind to the First Nation owners.
Would you buy anything without first knowing exactly what the product was and how it could benefit you? Definitely not. Neither should you vote for your next member of parliament without knowing who they are and how they plan to solve your problems. Watch The Next MP only on Diaspora Network Television and find out the men and women who want to represent you in parliament. The Next MP only on DNT.
We wake up every morning to different stories from politics, business, sports, and entertainment. These stories, one way or the other, affect our lifestyle and dealings with family, friends, and business associates. Your take on Diaspora Network Television gives you an opportunity to have your take on these pertinent issues via phone in and messages to our social media platforms, DNT Ghana on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If it's an important trending story, we will definitely talk about it. Your take with me, Yalsichi, coming soon on DNT.
I asked you earlier, can Africa count on you? We have the final 10 minutes of this interview. I want each of you to reach down and say, based on what you knew or thought of Africa prior to this interview, right? And moving forward, what would you do to connect more closely with Africa? Annabelle?
I think that the change definitely would start from my end, being a bit more curious and going out of my way to listen and to learn more about where I'm from. I wouldn't say that I'm in a position now to bring forth any change just because I don't know enough to be able to comment or make a substantial change. But I think that the curiosity aspect definitely is on me, just to really listen and learn, and then from there come from an informed position to bring forth my ideas.
How involved are you in the culture? Do you have African clothing and stuff?
I have a few outfits. I had definitely had more when I was younger, but at this age, I don't really have that many. I have like bits and pieces. Like I have jewelry that I wear daily. The headscarf that I will wear if my hair's not looking right. um, but as for traditional dress, like a complete outfit, I don't really have that many.
Would you be comfortable wearing an African dress to go out in public in Sydney?
Yeah, definitely.
Really?
Sydney is quite diverse. I would still probably get looks, but that wouldn't deter me from doing it.
What about the funeral clothing? You know, when you go to funerals, Ghanaians, we love funerals. You see them in the black and red. Have you worn any of those before?
I personally haven't, but my parents definitely do. I feel like there is literally a funeral. It feels like every other month, so it's become more of a celebration of life. It's more of a party, so people will get dressed,
Right.
and
Do you go with
commune
them?
each other.
Do you go with
No,
them?
I don't.
You don't go with them? Okay. All right. Very good. Now let me come to you, Aloho. What are you going to do differently to connect more with Africa besides your friends and your circle of friends in Houston? Connecting more to the country. What do you? Is that first of all? Is that important?
That is important. That is important to just connect my life to where I'm from all times, even when I'm not there. I do it in many. I said there's a lot of things we do when we were younger that when we get older kind of fades away for one reason or the other. And so to bring them back up, to realize why we did it, what's the reasoning behind it. Like I said, still learning your language. I would advise to you that like it's not too young, it's not too late for you to still, try to learn it. I found that they're actually advancing and they have some apps now that can teach you your language too. That's what I downloaded one that's teaching me Ishan right now. So just making sure that I'm embedded in the as much as possible and I don't let things fade away. I think that will power doing something. Things have to motivate you to do into action. So I think it's the enlightenment first that comes with it, which is all the learning, just so you know enough to actually do something. But I know as far as me being in education is a good way to expose my culture to other people. I teach at a school with predominantly Hispanic, 98% Hispanic students. And on Black History Month, this was the first Black History Month that I mixed in both Black American and African day. So every day I would do somebody different. So this time I didn't have, of course, a lot of African people. So I did popular ones like Fela, he's a musician, things like that. But what that does is that when I expose people to my culture, I become even hungry for more of who I am. And so I think sharing it with people as well, sharing my experiences, sharing how I grew up, my friends, they think it's hilarious, and they've actually lived through some of those experiences too, so they know all about it. But I think just being able to not only learn it and hoard it for yourself, but to like share what you're going through. You're open to any other, any other race telling you, or asking you questions. It just makes the education key. And I think that's the education was ultimately going to get us to actually do something. That generation that migrates back to Nigeria or back to Africa, Ghana, that would be the one that's like, okay, we've got enough information. Now it's time to do.
Okay. Let me ask you guys this. Before this interview, have you had a close interaction with another African who lived on a different continent?
Besides family?
Yeah, besides family.
That's what I was gonna say. I think that's the loophole, but yeah, no.
No. Is it important to know another African in your age group that lives in a different continent, far away, thousands of miles away? Is that important?
Yes.
That is important, yep.
Because you two are meeting for the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so let's say if a friendship developed right now, do you see how that expands your horizon a little bit besides, your inner circle? Because in your case, Aloha, Houston, Nigeria. In your case, Sydney and Ghana. But for the first time, you can talk Houston, Sydney. Is that important?
Right.
Yes.
I think that is important. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then finally, if you were to pick up a project in Africa, what project would that be? What would you? Because we know, let me get something straight. When people say that help in developing Africa, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to uproot yourself from where you are and come live there. But from where you are, you can make a change in Africa. Final question to both of you. If you had to make a change in Africa, or you had to do a project that helps with developing Africa, what would the project do? Let me start with you, Alon.
Okay, I'm just develop the project in my head, but ultimately, right away, children come to mind. Whatever I'm doing is it's always going to be with children. So the heart of it would be maybe education. A lot of stories I've heard, they're not really updated with mental illnesses. So there's a lot of children that are suffering from a lack of education because they have some kind of mental illness, or whether it be Down syndrome or autism. Those things, in my experience, Nigerians don't really do, and it might be African, but they don't really like to claim sicknesses. So because of that, they don't come up with solutions for the sickness because, oh, he doesn't have autism, he's okay, he's okay. So my education would be maybe helping out as far as why those kids, those underserved kids that are going unnoticed, one reason or the other. I think my project would be there with education.
Okay, what about you, Annabelle? Your project in Africa?
See, I'm not 100% sure. I think that I still have a lot more learning to do before I can decide where the biggest area of opportunity would be. But I think just from what I know now, I would have to agree definitely developing the children, because I think as they'll be the next generation to take over, if they if we can impart as much knowledge and tools to them as we can, I think that it would be beneficial for the nation as a whole, just to have great skills to really develop the country or the continent.
All right. So we're going to end, Phil, but I want you to have your respective final statements. Okay. I give each of you 2 minutes, right? In 2 minutes, tell me what you didn't know. In the case of the both of you, you haven't ever set foot on the continent. All right. So I want you to talk to me. Take your final 2 minutes and talk to me. We began with me asking you, what does Africa mean to you? And in ending, I want you to tell me what value you want to bring to Africa. Because Africa needs both of you. What value are you bringing to Africa? Count on you. Annabelle.
I think being able to collaborate, because it's a
Being able to
continent,
do
but
what?
I think collaborate with one another. So, like, be able to come together, share ideas, listen actively to what each other is saying, and then from there piece together a really solid plan that is inclusive of great points, because it's easy to see things from your point of view and your perspective, but what is a little bit more difficult is having the ability to view something from where someone else is coming from. So I think that that skill of being able to collaborate would be the best thing that it could offer.
Okay. Hello. What value do you bring?
It's a fully loaded question here. I want to say something. I really think collaboration is where our today's climate is at everywhere around the world. It's just we're seeking and we're really striving and struggling for understanding, for empathy, and for collaboration, for us to really empathize with where people are coming from and where they've been and where they're going, and be supportive of that. And I just feel like the collaboration is really what's gonna formulate the plan. Without that collaboration, the plans everywhere, and we see that sometimes. We see that manifest plans are just everywhere. It's just chaotic. So I feel like that collaboration of both, Africans, Americans, other fellow Africans, all of that collaboration needs to be Australians. So see how America, we only think America is out there. Australians, everywhere around the world, that collaboration is important so that we can grow to another level of understanding. Where we're at is nowhere near where we need to be.
Very good. Listen, you guys have been amazing. I am so appreciative of you joining me. As we end, I'm going to give each of you an assignment, okay? And this assignment is on record. It's part of this program. So your assignment is this. It's very simple. Aloha, I know your parents are Nigerian, so obviously Nigerian. And you too, Annabelle, your parents are Ghanaian. So outside of Nigeria and Ghana, I want each of you to choose one different African country and learn as much as you can about that country. And I'm going to connect with you on that platform to find out what you've learned. Annabelle, what country would you like to learn about besides Ghana and Nigeria?
I think Kenya.
Kenya, very good. Well, okay.
You took mine.
You pick Kenya. You're going to learn as much as you can about Kenya, right? What about you, Aloha? What country?
Okay. Huh? Oh, that's a good one. Okay. Egypt. Let's go with Egypt.
You're going to choose Egypt. All right. So good. We're going to end it on this note. And I really want to thank you guys for joining me. You guys are the future of the continent. Believe it or not. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You have never set foot there. But Africa is counting on you. As you go through your respective professions, wherever you are, no matter what you become, you're an African. And at some point, you have to look back at the continent and say, what can I do in my own little way to help develop the continent? So I really want to thank with you. I'll connect back with you on that platform, and let's see in about 2 weeks what each of you have learned about your chosen country. Kenya for you, Annabelle, and Egypt for Elahon. All right?
Mm-hmm.
This has been another
Okay.
edition of Diaspora Weekly, Spotlight on the Diaspora Millennials. My name is Jermaine Nkrumah, and you've been watching Diaspora Network Television. I thank you for watching, and we'll check back with you. Stay tuned.